I'm Master Sergeant Roy E Aldridge, United States Air Force, retired. I'm a Korean War and Vietnam War veteran. And I'm also a retired nuclear medicine technologist, which I did after I got out of the Air Force. I entered the Air Force in December 1952. Went to Korea, Gimpo Air Force Base, 1953. Returned in 1954 and got into the nuclear weapons career field. And what I mean into the nuclear career field is some of the first classes that were being turned over by the Atomic Energy Commission and the Manhattan Project to the Air Force so we could build and assemble nuclear bombs other than in Albuquerque and Los Alamos and Livermore, California. When we went to school, we literally received the weapons, as we call them, or devices. We never referred to them as a bomb.
Okay.
They were always a device or weapon. As a matter of fact, when the Manhattan Project ended, it became the Armed Forces Special Weapons Program. And so that's what I was really in. I call it the tail end of the Manhattan Project. It was in the Armed Forces Special Weapons Program or Project. We received the weapons in various containers. High explosives, aluminum cases, and we put them together.
Okay.
We handled the nuclear components with our bare hands until they found out that wasn't good because the oil from our hands was corroding the component. So then we went to cotton gloves, and the cotton gloves were too slick. We couldn't maintain a good control of it. So then we finally eventually went to rubber gloves. Now I'm talking 1954 to mid-1960.
Oh, okay.
So we handled the components and we assembled the weapons. Well, when I finished school at Sandia Base in Albuquerque, I was in the top 2 or 3% that went on up to Los Alamos. And there we handled more nuclear components and built devices to take out to Nevada, to the above ground proving grounds in Nevada.
What they call Area 51 now, or?
No. This is proving grounds.
Okay.
Area 51's off in the boondocks somewhere. This is where they set the weapons off in the atmosphere, above ground testing. Now, we had the trenches, we had the 13th Airborne, 11th Airborne Division there, had the Marines there, had the Army there, had the Air Force there, and in trenches. And they had set the device off. And the Air Force, my job was not only did I help build the thing, but I was also a radiological monitor. So I'm out of the trench after the shockwaves went over with my Geiger counter, wearing the latest protective clothing. No masks, no nothing, just a steel helmet and fatigues.
Literally just what you were...
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
And I'm walking out my Geiger counter and my different instruments, plotting out radiation lines. And when it got to a certain intensity, say, okay, guys, this is as far as you can go. Well, the Army, the Marine Corps, and everybody didn't like it. Air Force thought it was great, but everybody else didn't like it because they're trained to attack, attack, attack. This little line here didn't mean anything. What do you mean you're stopping me? So we got that settled. That's the way the game was going to be played. And I was on, you've seen my shot if you watch Discovery or something like that, because it's one of the ones where the trees lay over on the ground and come back up, burst in flames, the house disintegrates. Now, that's one of the devices I helped build.
Okay.
And that was Operation, I think it was called Doomsday. It's where we built a city. And it was houses of different structures, Venetian blinds, and basements and above ground. And it was just like a typical city. And it's a small town USA. School buses, kids sitting in school buses, kids standing, getting ready to get in school buses.
The little mannequins and everything.
Mannequins, yeah. And we set that thing off and showed the heat and blast damage that would happen. and some of the houses disintegrated. The brick houses stood up pretty good. But the one frame house that stood up, and she just saw it a couple of years ago, is still standing. It was made out of 2x6s, I think, instead of the 2x4 frames. And it's still standing.
Wow.
It withstood the blast and the heat and everything. Where the normal houses, other than the concrete house, double-walled concrete.
Right. So you built houses out of different material?
Yes.
Okay.
So, find out which was the best. They said, well, okay, well, let's just stay with our standing construction because it's too expensive. So that was part of my job. I was out in the Pacific on some hydrogen bomb testing. And that was, that's when we found out about fallout. I mean, really found out about fallout. We set off the device. It was dropped from a bomber, B-36 bomber, and I was on the aircraft. And it was supposed to go 1.2, 1.6 megaton, and it went around 24.
Wow.
And it literally caught the aircraft on fire.
The one that dropped it?
You know, we dropped it, and we lost an engine and landing gear, and so we made it back to Tinian, and dished off the coast of Tinian, beach of Tinian, just waited ashore.
You were on that plane?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And we all got sick, and we went to Guam, and the diagnosis was coral poisoning and jungle fever. We didn't know it was radiation. I did not know how much I got until I got into nuclear medicine.
Okay.
And started looking at the radiation charts and found out how much radiation I got one time. It's right at 125 rem, which will make you sick, bleeding gums, and things like that.
Wow. So like the guys at Chernobyl who were exposed to mass amounts as well? Okay.
And of the air crew, I'm still the only one alive. General Samuels died a couple of years ago. He was a colonel then, his good friend. And, well, I'm 84 years old, and so most of my comrades have passed on. My nuclear weapons crew I had in Labrador are all dead except me. I've got one good friend. Well, I've got some good friends that were in the missile program. They're still alive. But they're younger than I am. I got into, after I came back from Labrador, I got into missiles, intercontinental missiles, and intermediate range missiles. And handled the reentry vehicle and the warhead. Now, the reentry vehicle is actually a spacecraft.
Okay.
And the warhead is set inside the spacecraft.
Okay. Now, why is it a spacecraft?
Because when it's launched, it goes into outer space. It goes up about 250 nautical miles,
Okay, that makes sense.
traveling 17,000 miles an hour, and comes back in and re-enters the atmosphere, just like any space capsule. Matter of fact, our squadron, the 51st Munitions Maintenance, our motto was first in space. We were in space before NASA. They took our technology and put it on the Gemini, on the Mercury, and the Gemini, and the Apollo, and they're using our technology on the current Mars lander. The current Mars lander and the Apollo look a lot like a king-size Mark II reentry vehicle we used on the Thor and Atlas missiles in 1958, 59. Same type heat shield, and copper and acrylic. Now, I was on Gemini 4. They put me in, we were used to handling, and we had just switched over to a new reentry vehicle that was made out of carbon fiber resin type thing. And we have been successful in handling that and repairing it and launching it, getting it launched and recovering it. So we were selected, my team was selected to go on Gemini 4. And we picked up the spacecraft at the lane of the shield. And that was our job. We stayed with that spacecraft, and if they nicked the shield, we repaired it. Not civilians, all military. Ed White, Ed McDivitt. That's not his first name, not Ed. Colonel McDivitt. We met them. Personally, matter of fact, Colonel White, Ed White, the first man American to walk in space, took my Eagle Scout badge and the space with him. My son's got it at home, and autographed pictures of him outside the spacecraft and everything. And so we took it from manufacturing to where it came back to the Cape.
Okay. So
we weren't on the recovery of it. I'd like to have been on the actual recovery on the Iwo Jima, but we didn't see it again until after it came back to the Cape. And then that's when we did an analysis to say, hey, that's a good heat shield, and the rest of them are. Then we went back to Vandenberg.
Okay. So for the people who said that we didn't go to the moon because we didn't have the technology, I mean, I didn't know it was taken from the military and adapted to NASA.
Well, they took over the moonshot, the Apollo, was taken from the military for political reasons.
Okay.
Because they wanted it to be completely neutral.
Okay.
And I'm very bitter about that. We lost 3 good men as soon as we turned it over to the damn civilians. Excuse my language. They went from a proven oxygen air mixture to 100% oxygen environment. We called fire, and my good friend Ed White was killed. So was Gus Grissom, who I'd met in Chaffee. I'd met, but Ed White was a close friend. I considered a close friend. And as soon as we turned it over to civilian control, they were killed. That was Apollo 1. People don't like for me to say that, but it's the truth. The military had a tighter control than the civilians. I've seen this on many occasions. I was at an air base in Washington where United Airlines 747 made an emergency landing. They had to make what they call a flaps up landing. And we had a 3-mile runway, like out here at Biggs. And when we went out there to get the aircraft, we saw things on the Form 1 that would have grounded every B-52 we had. So that's why I say that. Civilians are a lot sloppier or lax.
Just as a little aside, do you think the space program should still be in the hands of the military?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm not in favor of the Space Command because we're already there. But we've been in space, the military's been in space. We're still launching satellites from Vandenberg and Canaveral. We're launching something from Vandenberg that goes up and stays up in orbit 2 or 3 years or months or whatever. Then all of a sudden it comes back and lands at Vandenberg. It's a little airplane. No idea what that is. I just know about it because I got friends stationed out there. And every now and then they say this thing comes and lands and there's nobody there. It's a drone type aircraft. Nobody knows what it does. Nobody says anything about it to speak of. It's launched and
goes and comes back.
6 months later, whatever. So we're still in space. Should I think space be turned into a weapons field? No. No. It should be a weapons-free zone. Now, as far as spy satellites and GPS satellites, yeah, that's fun. You can find places like this and around. It's scary how accurate these things are.
It really is.
But anyway, back.
The Cuban Missile.
I was in the Cuban Missile Crisis. I went from Vandenberg, my team, 2 members of my team. John Lindgren, who's a very dear friend, I've known since '58. Fred Wolf is deceased now. We went to Vandenberg Air Force Base. From Vandenberg Air Force Base, formed like a little academy, and went to Malmstrom Air Force Base, Great Falls, Montana, which was designated the first Minuteman missile base. Well, we had gone through our tests, preliminary tests, and they said yes. Now, nuclear weapons people were monitored more than anybody in the world. If you had a test, I had 4. So we were sanctioned. We could work on a real live warhead and work on a real live reentry vehicle for the Minuteman missile.
Okay.
Well, here comes, coming back from lunch, and the base sirens went off. And going out to the weapons storage area, we went around the end of the runway, and the alert barn, they had air defense aircraft there. Early morning, barn kicked open, the doors kicked open, and they launched 2 F-101 Voodoos with nuke weapons on board. And we knew something was going on then. We got into the area, and everybody's running around, and they were bringing in a warhead. Well, John Lindgren and I and Fred Wolf, Noah Scrimsher, and John McLean was the team. I was team chief. They says, okay, guys, we got to go. This is real. We brought in the warhead. We ran all the tests on the warhead, put it inside the reentry vehicle, and assembled the reentry vehicle, and took it out to a truck. And they loaded it on the truck where they take it out to the missile site. Well, They got out the missile site, they had to chase the civilians off because we hadn't bought the sites off yet. They had to literally take them off, the Boeing people off, under leave or be shot. We're going to war. And we put that missile on that Minuteman before it went through any acceptance testing. We had no idea when we connected that main umbilical plug if that missile was going to launch right then and there or not. But that was number one. And 10 days later, we had 10 in the ground, same way. And we were known as the ace in the hole. And President Kennedy referred to us as his ace in the hole. We had 10 Minuteman birds on 30-second countdown. Not minute, second. We got transferred. I got transferred down to Francis E. Warren in Cheyenne because I had Atlas launch control experience and was out in the site in Nebraska. I can't remember the name of that town, Gold something. And Gold's right across the Wyoming border. And set with an Atlas missile above ground like this, counted down to T-minus 10 seconds, waiting for the launch code. So that's how close we come to war. Nothing like the 13 days in August or October. That was the political side. They've never made a movie or anything about the military side, about the 100 B-52s and B-47s flying orbits like this with weapons on board, just waiting for the fail-safe code to come through.
During the whole Cuban Missile Crisis.
During the whole Cuban Missile Crisis. We had 12 Titan 1s, 10 Minutemen. I think we had about 15, 20 Atlas missiles, all with megaton warheads. And they sure were pointed at Havana. And everybody's asked me, how did you get into nuclear weapons? I said, I have no idea. I said, all I know is I got orders to go to report to the commandant of the ROTC unit, University of California, Berkeley. And that's what I did. I said, oh boy, I'm going to get my commission. I'm going to get a college education by commission. Well, that was different. I checked in, and they put me on a bus and took me to a different place on campus behind a chain link fence that had a dormitory in it, and that's where I was with 50 other guys. And so we're all talking. Officers were across the way from us in a similar situation. So when we come into class, they came by and we filled out all the security sheets and stuff, and we'd go out and get on a bus and see some and they call names. Well, some of the guys didn't get on the bus. They didn't pass clearance. And so we put us on this bus, took us to Livermore, California. And we're sitting in this big pit-type classroom, typical college life. And this general walks out and he says, gentlemen, I'm General Leslie Groves. He said, you're getting ready to start on a great adventure. He says, you're going to be working with or being associated with such gentlemen as Dr. Robert Oppenheimer, Edwin Teller came out. Hans Bader came out. And eventually, you may see and be associated with Enrico Fermi, And we will bring you by to meet for Niels Moore to meet you. Now, this is a hierarchy of theoretical physics. Oppenheimer theoretical physics, all of them. Mm-hmm. And I did get to see Niels Moore. I did meet the others, all the others. And we would go to, and we go to class, and they'd hand us 10 sheets of paper, classified top secret, course of the Atomic Energy Act, 1954. And that was for our notebook.
Those 10 sheets of paper.
Huh?
Those 10 sheets of paper.
10 sheets of paper. So take my
Numbered
notes.
papers.
So take my notes. And then class is over. Give me your papers. How do I study? Well, you can come back and we'll get them out of the safe for you. No, I'm going to travel from San Francisco to Livermore to study for an hour. Well, we all developed this memory, and I still got about a 95, 96 recall. We sit back and talk. And so we learn all this stuff. And then they decided, about 1965, hey, we felt this guy's too much. So then they just turn the switch off. How does it work? Great. Type thing, But you get back in my class, and she'll verify this. We can still draw the schematics, tell you the chemical composition of the explosives, tell you how the different nuclears are fused together. And we had our first reunion, nuclear weapons technicians reunion. Well, I've told her and the girls these stories. They didn't quite call me a liar, but they did think it's true. So we go to the first reunion, and as she says, my God, these guys picked up the conversation right where they left it 30 years ago. I hadn't been associated with any of these people for 30 years. Mm-hmm. It's just like yesterday.
So from 65 to like 95.
Yeah.
So let me ask you about what could be the next Cuban Missile Crisis. They're pulling us out of the nuclear non-proliferation agreement. Russia says they want to build a base back in Cuba. Do you see history repeating itself?
We learn from, it seems like we never learn from history. And history could be repeating itself. Don't fear the Russians so much as I do the Iranians, but I fear the North Koreans worse. They've got an ICBM. They've proven that. That last launch they had, they put that missile 200 and some odd nautical miles up, and it came back. That would reach the United States. Okay. Now, I don't know about their warheads. If their warheads are miniaturized enough or technically enough. The re-entry vehicle they've showed on TV looks similar to something I worked on. But the warhead also looks similar. But is that what they're doing? Is that what they want? Or is that what they're detonating underground?
Right.
But I would fear North Korea. We got the peace talks, we're playing, supposedly. They're tearing down the DMZ, taking out some guard towers and clearing the minefields and everything. But the North Koreans terrify me.
What do you think?
I've been there, done that.
What do you think we need to do differently with North Korea?
The thing we can do with North Korea is turn them into like we did China. China is what I call a communist capitalist country. When we were in China, we went back to Korea for a revisit. First time I've been since I left. Couldn't believe it. Got off the airplane at Incheon, most modern, cleanest airport I've ever seen in my life. Got on a bus, had 8 lanes going each direction. And when I was there, I had a little small road, 2 trucks could hardly pass. What was all rubble and junk and villages and stuff here, modern and skyscrapers. Seoul's got a population of 10 million people. Most modern city I've ever been in. Makes the United States cities, well, it makes it, be truthful, it makes El Paso look like a third world city. Yeah. Yeah, it does. They got streetcars. So now we got streetcars. But they run everywhere. They got 200-mile bullet trains that zip up and around and stuff. You know, we got Union Pacific creaking through at 35 miles an hour. They got high speed. They got parking garages that you wouldn't believe. Golf World, is that the name of it? The new
Top Golf.
Top Golf.
Top Golf. They got those things on every corner. Everybody's got 4 or 5 parking garages, and on top of the parking garage is 4 or 5 more floors of golf. You know, so but going there, the Korean government, once we set foot on soil, we cannot spend any money. Our money was no good, except for beer and souvenirs. The Korean government footed the entire bill for a week that we were there. Everywhere we went in the buses, it said Korean War veterans. People stopped and bowed down to us. We went to the War Museum. There were several classes, small children. They just swoop around us. And I don't speak Korean anymore. When I was there, it was a mixture of Korean and Japanese. I was afraid to say anything. And the teacher said they speak English. They'll ask you questions in English because it's their second language. Not Spanish, English is their second language. And they would ask us different questions. The kids, I mean, I'm talking, what were they, 8, 9-year-olds? 8, 9-year-old kids, 10-year-olds. And we'd explain what was going on in the museum and everything. So then our side trip was to China. Once again, we land at Beijing. Beautiful airport, spotless. Got on the bus, the first thing we saw was McDonald's.
You travel halfway around the world and go to McDonald's for breakfast.
And we stayed at a 5-star hotel. Of course, we paid for this part. We just ate this part. And but we went there to go to see primarily to see the terracotta soldiers in
Xi'an.
Xi'an. That's how this works. Everybody's got to go see that. And but the pollution, you couldn't hardly see across the street. I thought we were having a bad day. I said, no, it's like this all the time. And not too far from our hotel was the Olympic Stadium. They were just building it. Matter of fact, when we were there, they took the braces off. They didn't know if that bird's nest was going to stand or not. They took all the sports off. And then we went down, and once we got out of Beijing, we went to the Great Wall. It was pretty nice. But I asked our guide, I said, what are they going to do to clear the air up here in Beijing? You know, the Olympic people can't do this. And he says, they're going to shut all the factories. There'll be no cars for 3 months.
Wow.
And they did. They shut everything down, factories, mills, and everything for 3 months. And that's how bad the air was. Yeah, first thing we saw. And when we went to see the terracotta soldiers, we pulled in with, it was the day we went, we saw it. Anyway,
Yeah, the day we went to
the air was so thick, we drove by this place, and the air was so thick. I didn't notice it. So that morning, it rained that night. They cleared the air out. And there was a nuclear power plant right across the street from it. I didn't even see it. It's a nuclear power plant. And it wasn't, I don't know if it was online or not, but that's how thick the air was.
That's bad.
I mean,
The flag in the museum.
huh?
The flag.
And another thing that was really sad is they took us to the War Museum in Beijing, right off of Tiananmen Square. And took us to the third floor. And that was the invasion of the United States of North Korea. And that was the liberation of North Korea. Well, all the maps they had were different than ours, had the wrong dates, and all this kind of stuff. And of course, we had these guys that said, "Hell, I was right here on that date. That's wrong." You know? So we're going through, and here, hanging in the museum, is the regimental colors of 31st Regimental Combat Team. Out of the 1,800 men that were on that team, that combat team, 387 survived. They caught the main thrust of the Chinese at the Chosin Reservoir, not the Marines. And they fought a delaying action until the Marines could get organized their retreat. 2 Army groups saved the Marines. 31st Regimental Combat Team was annihilated, except for 300 men. The 32nd Regimental Combat Team was down the southern end of the reservoir, and they stopped the pincer movement from coming in, and they lost a lot of men. Mm-hmm. Now the brother of the, we have an El Paso one whose brother was in the 32nd Regimental Combat Team, and he's still listed missing in action. Fernando Ederola. Ben is in our Korean War veteran, his brother's Korean War veteran group, in the group.
Okay.
That's an interesting story. It's sad. I just hope it's open long enough and they can get in there and get these guys home. They know where they are. And that's always been the bargaining chip. We throw in a sanction, they said you can't have any more bodies. It's always been a bargaining chip. They did find Colonel Faith remains. They've had 3 out of the 4 returned. 5. We've had 3 returned to El Paso. They were from El Paso. I can't remember their names right now.
But they were returned.
But they were returned just in the last few years.
So let's talk about nuclear medicine.
When I retired, when I was getting ready to retire, I went down to see if I had a marketable civilian skill. Mm-hmm. And it came back that I could be a nuclear manager. And so I applied, being I was the NCOIC of the Armed Forces School of Nuclear Weapons. I applied to then put the Atomic Energy Commission which is now the DOE, for a job. Being there, people were coming through my school. And they say, Roy, we'd love to have you, but you don't have a degree. You just got a high school education. And I says, what degree in what? And the guy told me, nose picking, basket weaving, anything, a degree. That's all I require. Says, just like when you got into nuclear weapons. A high school education was mandatory. GED will not suffice. Okay. To work for the Atomic Energy Commission, a degree of anything is, excuse me, is required. So I went to take my physical. This is 6 months before you get out. And I parked in a parking lot called Nuclear Medicine. So after I finished my physical, I dropped in and saw the secretary, and I said, what's nuclear medicine? And she said, I want to introduce you. She said, come with me. So I went back and says, this is Colonel Burden, Tom Burden. She didn't call him Tom. This is Colonel Burden. He's MD in charge of nuclear medicine. So I sat down and started talking to him. I says, you think I could do nuclear medicine? And he says, well, do you have an X-ray background? I said, no. But I got a nuclear weapons background. What do you mean? I build a bomb. I got all the safety you require. I got all the physics, probably more than you require. And, stuff. I've never heard of nuclear medicine before. I said, but the Air Force has a program called Project Transition. Started by Nixon for the armed forces to get you trained up in civilian life when you get out. Have a job when you walk out the gate. And I said, I can get off, I think, for this 6 months on transition. I said, and he said, what makes you think you get off? And I said, well, the commanding general of Lowry Air Force Base, the training command, I used to fly with him, Colonel General Samuels. I knew him when he was a young officer. Wow, okay. He gets on the phone, and he calls the commandant of the nuclear weapons school in Bethesda, Maryland, because that was the only nuclear medicine school in the military. And he says, Fred, I've got this guy who wants to be a nuke med tech, but he doesn't have any X-ray background. Is there any way we can work him in? He's an Air Force guy. Has nothing to do with medicine. He says he builds nuclear weapons. And he says, and he wants to go into this project transition. And he says, can you train him? You think it'll work? Yeah, it'll work. Oh, we'll try. Never heard of it before. We'll try. So, but he's got to get released from the Air Force and assigned to the Navy. And then when he's released from the Navy, he's got to be assigned to the Army. So I went back to Lowry Air Base and went to see General Sam. And Sam said, and I said, General Sam, I've got this opportunity to become a nuclear medicine technician. But I've got to be released from the Air Force under Project Transition and assigned to the U.S. Navy. And if I complete that school, then I'm assigned to the U.S. Army out here at Fitzsimmons. But it's going to take longer than 6 months. He looked at me and he says, well, Roy, here's what I'm going to do. I'll release you to the Navy. and I'll release you to the Army. But you're going to you got to teach. You owe the Air Force some money, so you got to teach a course. I was okay. He says, when you come back to Fitzsimmons, what are your hours? I said 7 to 4. He says, okay, why don't you teach 6 to midnight? So that's okay, I can do that. Give me a chance for some sleep. So no problem. This is okay. So I got it all squared away. I went back to Bethesda, Maryland. Went through the Nuke Med School. Did pretty good. Came back, doing my internship at Fitzsimmons Army Hospital in Aurora, Colorado, which was 3 miles outside where my office was, and my classroom. Come back in, I taught the officers course from 6 to midnight. And I knew the guy who controlled the schedule. He used to work for me. So he scheduled me two nights a week. And when I finished, so when I retired, I was a nuclear medicine technologist. I completed the basic school and completed the internship. I'm off to Montana.
Pass the board. Pass the board.
And passed the boards. Had to take the board twice. First time they thought I had a pony, because nobody had ever scored a 98 percentile on a bell curve. Forgot about my memory. So they brought me in to set me in a room with 4 monitors and gave me a test that hadn't been released to anybody yet. And I took it, and I didn't do as good. I only scored a 95. So they knew I didn't have a pony. But my memory was still everything, just like taking pictures. And so I got in Nuke Med. Did it for 35 years. I was in on a member of the team who did the first heart study with nuclear medicine, where we took a picture of a beating heart. This was done at the VA in Denver on a homemade computer with 12K memory. Yeah. And then...
Huge computer, right?
Yeah, I mean, it was a monster. It took up half the room, it seemed like. They had 12K memory. But we took a picture of the isotope coming in and filling the heart. And after it got into heart, we'd watch it move. Well, we published it. We said we were the first ones to ever do this. Of course, when we sent it to the Society of Nuclear Medicine for peer review, the boys out in California at the VA San Francisco, University of San Francisco, says, oh no, we did it at this time. You weren't the first. You said you did yours at 9 o'clock, we did ours at 8:59. And that was it was a small group. So, well, just a minute. You're wrong. We're on Mountains time. We did it an hour before you did. So they had to concede to us. We were the first ones to do it. But now nuclear cardiology is a passing thing. Everybody does it.
Yeah, I'm thinking of when I had my heart cath and
That's mistake.
sitting there talking to the guy while it's going on, watching the video of everything in my heart.
Yeah. But we're injecting a radio tracer that we're running on a treadmill. And then we inject it while you're running. And then we sit you down, bring you back a couple hours later, take 2 pictures. One while you're exercising, bring you back a couple hours later, see what it looks like when you rest. If the hole in your heart doesn't fill up, you're in problems. You can't see that on cath. So then we go on to different looking at different things, and we get into what we call positron emission tomography, PET. Best cancer finding tool in the world, non-invasive. Inject radioactive fluorine deoxyglucose, put you in this scanner, and if it lights up, 95% high probability that's cancer. It'll take up in the GI tract if you're not clean, but if we're looking up in the lungs and the brain and
Right.
different part. So I get a call and it's very good for the heart. So a group of doctors out of Dallas and the years progressed, okay? I started out, I did some of the early thallium heart studies on dogs. I did thallium heart studies on humans. Had a contract once again with United Airlines from their headquarters in Denver to do some on their pilots. We grounded 3 of their senior pilots because they had had previous heart attacks. So they canceled the contract. And that's how good we could see it. And went on the stress test and everything. And now I get a phone call. I'm I've moved from Denver, Colorado Springs down to Arlington, Texas. And, so I'm at TCOM, Texas, Osteopathic School of Medicine. And I get this phone call. It's lunch hour. And the guy says, Mr. Aldridge? I said, yeah. He says, this is Dr. Brown. I said, yes, sir. How can I help you? He says, do you know what PET is? I said, yeah, it's positron emission tomography. Do you know what it's been used for? I said, yeah. I said, the biggest thing was used to get John Hinckley off schizophrenia. And it's a research tool, but it held up in court. He says, can you meet me at my office at 11 o'clock tonight? And I says, yeah. Guess so. He says, we're in San Antonio now. Your name came up in a conference, and we'd like to interview you for the job. All right. 11 o'clock at night, I'm at Medical City, Dallas, being interviewed to run a PET scanner. Got the job. Got all set up, walked into where the PET scanner was. They only had one piece of equipment and a list of paper. Equipment needed. Just set her up. It's all yours. So I literally set up the first PET scanner in North Texas, in Dallas. Got it up running, started doing our hearts and everything. This was in April of 1990.
Okay.
At that time, there was 50 PET scanners in the United States. Of the PET scanners, of the 50, 3 of us were using this isotope called rubidium, which had a 75-second half-life. So we literally made it right then at injection time. It's hard to describe, but we did it. And so the University of Texas Health Science Center of Dallas would not recognize it. They wouldn't even come and look at it. We wrote papers, and they says, well, you're a for-profit hospital. It's owned by cardiology doctors. You got this interest and stuff. They would accept the papers. The insurance companies are the same way, especially Medicare. So here comes one of the Dallas TV stations, WFAA, who had a medical reporter. So she had been there once before, so she called me up. I couldn't do anything unless you went through her PR people. So they says, Roy, would you come in here on Valentine's Day? This person wants to interview you. That's okay. So I'm showing her our heart studies, and I said, look at this, look at this. And I had the ability to bring up the heart study done the traditional way. And I said, see it, you know. I said, you can see the difference. Yeah, this one looks bad. This one doesn't look right. That's right. This is the one done on pet scanner. Well, Mr. Aldridge, if this pet scanner is so good, why doesn't the med school health science center have one? I said, no. I said, you asked the wrong question. And she says, what do you mean? I says, why does the UT Med School, Dallas, the only part of the University of Texas Health Science System that doesn't have one? Why don't they? I said the wrong thing. Next morning, I get a phone call. Roy, this is Dr. Lackey. Yes, sir. Excellent interview. You're very knowledgeable. I said, no. But never say that again. Yes, sir. Click. 3 years later, they finally got a PET scanner in Dallas at this med school. And I was doing brains. I was doing brain studies where we were seeing epilepsy without seizing. We were under USC protocols, operated under UCLA protocols, because the community was so close then. We would go to a meeting at a resort in California called Dana Point. It'd be about 35, 40 people, PET scanners, maybe 100. And now it takes up the convention center.
So you've been on the forefront of a lot.
I was on the edge.
Nuclear weapons, the space program,
Yeah.
this.
And I'm officially listed in the archives of the Positron Emission Tomography Molecular Imaging Group as a pioneer.
Oh, wow.
Because I got in right at the beginning.
So let me ask you with this. We'll close this first part with this. If you could say anything to anybody, you know, because you've done a lot, what would you say to, I mean, there's a lot of people who say they can't, or it can't be done, or we can't do it that way. I mean, what would you say to encourage people to this?
Don't let Gertrude go.
Unfiltered.
No, unfiltered. No. In PET scanning, the camera I had, and some of the isotopes I had, everybody says it can't be done. And I say, shh, don't let Gertrude hear you because she thinks she can. Nothing can't be done. Shh, because somebody will think they can and do it. That's my model. You know, the impossible, we handle immediately. Miracles may take a couple of days.
You can get there. Okay.
That's the best thing I can come up with is I don't think anything can't be done. It just